A few days ago on Twitter, one of the developers of Minecraft, Dinnerbone, put out a tweet asking for some suggestions. So, I put my thinking cap on, had a rummage around to see what I could come up with, and so I've got a list of 20 things to show you today that are kind of annoying, kind of tiny, and I think that'd be great to get into the game if possible. So, Dinnerbone, here are my 20 tiny annoying suggestions for Dinnerbone. First up, let's talk about these things. Dispensers. They are a pain to craft, so how about a way to make them a bit less painful? So if we go over to our crafting table, we can see how we craft a dispenser. So if we click on this here in the recipe book, you can see this is the recipe for a dispenser. Now the problem here is that the bow is not stackable, and so if I shift click on this, I'm not getting any more, of course, because we can't stack the bows, so we have to do one of these one at a time. Now the other thing is you need to be careful because you can easily destroy a really good bow that you've got. Now if you do shift click here, it won't pick the enchanted bow, it will just pick an unenchanted bow, but if you're doing this manually, you could easily put the wrong bow in and that will still create a dispenser and you've lost your good bow. So what's a better way? Well, as you can see from the recipe, if we just take out the bow, we can actually make a dropper. And all we need to do now is add the ingredients for a bow to the dropper. So imagine we put a dropper in the middle and then add some sticks around it as if were making a bow around it. We can now make a dispenser. Check that out. And actually in my recipe book over here, you can see we've got a second dispenser recipe. We can click on this. Look at this, 20. I just made 20 dispensers. That was well easy. Something else that's kind of annoying is when you're mining and this happens. Your pick breaks. If you're not paying attention, it's very easy for your pick to break. So it'd be great if we could stop that. And the thing is, we already have the bars underneath the tools to kind of show you how far you are. But if you're visually impaired, it's not so easy to see those lines. And even if you're not visually impaired, if you can see fine, but you're a derp like me, you can quite easily break your tools. So how do we fix that? How about under accessibility settings, there's a setting to give us a warning when our tool is almost broken. So I've got a new pick right here. It's almost broken, but if I get to a certain point, we get this, a little warning, a little sound, a little warning to say our pick is about to break. Now maybe we don't want this for all tools, maybe we just want it for the diamond and the netherite. Maybe that's all you need, but it gives you a little bit of warning and a few, you can still mine a few blocks after that, and that should save your precious tools. If you're in a snowy biome, it can look really cool because we have snow layers, but when you're in a desert, it's not so cool. I mean, it's pretty hot in the desert, right? But imagine if we had sand layers. We could do this kind of thing. Look at this. I'd love to have this. This would be great for building. So this is kind of looks like, the sand has been blowing in the wind and it's kind of gathered around the buildings. So maybe this is where they spawn. Maybe there's a desert village. Maybe we can have these sand layers spawning all around the buildings. Maybe we could find them in the chest. Maybe there could be a crafting recipe for them. This would be super cool and really good for building. There are some Easter eggs in this game related to the names of the developers. If you name a mob Dinnerbone, they turn upside down. If you name them Grum, they also turn upside down. If you find a sheep and name it Jeb_, come here guy, they turn into a rainbow sheep. I think there's one more developer that needs to have this, and that is Slice Slime. And we're in this swamp, which is the perfect place. Here's our guy, Mr. S. Lime, Mr. Slime. If you rename a slime Slice Slime, listen to what might happen.
Yay.
Yay.
He says, yay. So when he bounces, there's a chance he says yay. And this is a thing from a Slice Slime streams. Yay. So if you're not watching Slice Slime on Twitch, then there'll be a link in the description. Go and check him out. It's really fun. And yay.
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 I quite often like to fly in F5 mode, but a lot of the time I'm just flickering in and out of existence. Dinnerbone, please. Fix this one. When you're creating a new world, there is this option called Allowed Cheats. I think that should be renamed. Renamed to Allow Commands, because that is actually what you're allowing. You're allowing someone to run commands. That doesn't mean they're cheating, and also you can't cheat in Minecraft. It's a sandbox game. Everyone wants to play how they want, and everyone can play in different styles. Sometimes you might want to just run the odd command here and there to maybe turn off fire tick, that kind of thing. That doesn't mean that you're cheating. And yeah, like I said, you can't cheat in Minecraft. It's a sandbox game. Everyone should be allowed to play as they want and not feel bad if they want to use some commands. Everybody loves the sound of Insta Mining. This is one of the best things in the game. The problem is, when we get to deep slate this stuff, you can't Insta mine it. It's way too slow. But maybe there is a way. How about if we could allow Insta mining from a netherite pick instead? At the moment you can't do that, but how about if we had some of this stuff that you could in fact Insta mine? This would make things much easier when it comes to mining, but also give us a little bit of a difference between the netherite picks and also the diamond picks. And while we're on the subject, let's talk about beacon beams. Beacon beams, of course, look super cool, and if you add some glass to them, you can colour them, which is very nice indeed. And this means you can use these in your builds for something that looks good. So maybe you've got some red laser beams coming up in your bank vault, that kind of thing, but you don't want these beams shooting out of the top of the building. If you're using them as lasers, as something decorative, that would look a bit weird. So, and also maybe you're down in the caves, you're mining away with your haste beacon, and maybe you don't want to draw attention to yourself. But of course, you've got this big beam coming up into the sky, and yeah, that is not really helping much. So what I'd like to propose is to, if you add tinted glass to the top of a beam here, wherever it lands, that will cut off the supply of the beam. Now the effect should still work as usual, but the beam itself continues up to where we get to the tinted glass, and then it stops. So yeah, we can hide it and use it as we want. Next, let's talk about this stuff, the quartz. Now I think we're missing a trick with this. I think there's a little bit of inconsistency. Now in the overworld, when there are a bunch of like ores, for example, we can craft them into storage blocks. So here we have redstone blocks we can craft the lapis blocks, of course diamond blocks, and there are others as well. Now with the nether quartz, you can do the same thing. You can create the nether quartz blocks, but you can't transform them back again into the nether quartz. So with diamonds, you can get the diamonds back, with redstone back, and with the lapis you get that back, but the quartz you can't. How about a change though? So you could imagine we put our block in here and we can get the quartz back again. That would be a super cool change. That means that yeah, we can store this, we can use those blocks to store the quartz, but also sometimes if you overmake them and you think, oh no, I didn't mean to make that many, I need to get some quartz back, you can always craft them back again and get the quartz. While we're on the subject of consistency, how about dyeing wool? That is a little bit unfair, I think. If we want to dye wool at the moment, you put in your wool blocks. Let's say we'll put one in there. You've got to use one dye for each block. That is quite expensive in terms of dye. But when we do other dyeing in the game, glass, for example, we normally put 8 around the outside and then 1 dye in the middle. So 1 dye will dye 8 blocks. So that's pretty cool. I'd like to propose we do the same thing for wool. So let's put 8 around the outside, your colour in the middle to get 8 wool. That would be much better. This is a slime farm. And this is a magma cream farm, while this is a ghast farm. Can you see where I'm going with this? All these farms look exactly the same. I think we could do with a change. I like my farms as much as the next person, but when they all look the same, I think we need a change. And the change I think we should go with is that mobs cannot spawn if they intersect with a portal block. That might be controversial, but I think there is one exception to that rule. I'm of course talking about these guys, the zombified piglins. There is a mechanic in the game where they will spawn randomly when a portal block gets ticked. So I think we should retain that mechanic. That is really fun. So we can still have our portal gold farms, that kind of thing. But apart from that, I think if mobs try and spawn on the surface, and they can because of the light level, I think that should no longer work if they hitbox intersects with these portal frames. So let's get some more interesting farms going, and not the same old portal based farms that so many people build nowadays. This next one is super annoying, and it's to do with the mechanic in the game called pick block. So I've got some blocks in my hotbar. I've also got a bunch of blocks in my inventory. If I was to mouse click on one of these blocks, it will switch to that block. So you see in my hotbar, I don't have any cobblestone. If I click my mouse wheel, I now have cobblestone. Now that is super useful. That is super great. But sometimes when you're building, you flick over and you use a tool maybe to break a block that you didn't get quite right. And now if I pick block and I do this, for example, let's go for the calcite. Now my pick has lost. It's now not on my hotbar. So now if I decide I've now made another mistake, I now need to go into my inventory, find my pick. Normally it's in amongst a whole bunch of other items, and put it back. So what can we do to make this a bit easier? I'd like to propose that we add a hotkey that will lock our item in place. So I have my pick selected at the moment. If I press my hotkey, we'll get a visual representation that item is locked in that slot. We can either have a padlock like this, or we could maybe have a different color outline just to denote that item is locked. Now, when I do pick block, my pick will stay where it is, and instead the calcite that I've got a pick block here will end up in the slot to the right. Alternatively, we don't need to lock the tools in place. We could just say that pick block doesn't replace tools, and that would work as well. Next up is the geodes, and these things, the crystals. These crystals are really useful because you can create tinted glass for them, and that is quite popular. The problem is that they grow on these blocks here, the budding amethyst, and these budding amethysts, you can't get them or move them. So if I use a stilt touch pick on this block right here, you can see it just breaks and disappears. If I try and use a piston, let's put one down here and give it some power, you'll see the block just gets destroyed and we can't pick it up. So the problem with that is that the farms that we build for these things, we have to remove all of the geode apart from the budding amethyst, and then we have an absolute sea of hoppers or pistons or whatnot, and it's not much fun to build, and the rates are quite slow, and there's not much reward for effort involved. Now what I'd like to propose is a change. And that change is just to make these movable. I don't think we should be able to pick them up with a pick. So for a silk touch pick, I think that should still not work. But if we put a piston behind and in fact power it, what it should do is be movable just like that. Now what does that do? Well, that means that what we can do now is we can get a good reward for investment in terms of time. So you could just stick to one geode and make a farm like that. Maybe you could move these around into a more optimal position to make them a bit more fun to use. But if you can find a whole bunch of geodes close by, you can then use pistons to move all of the budding amethyst into one location. That's quite a bit of work and quite a bit of effort, but in return for that effort you'll be able to get much better rates on your farms and get much more tinted glass. I'm not much of a fan of scaffolding, and I'll tell you why for a few reasons. But first of all, what I do like is that it's nice and easy to build up. We can just spam this down here. We get a nice long tower that we can then climb up, which is super nice. And then when we're on top here, we can then extend it nice and easily. We do have a limit of only 6 blocks before block starts falling down. I don't like that, so maybe that can be removed and we could just pillar up forever, or at least make this a bit longer. The other thing I like is that when we come down here, we can then break this block and then the whole structure comes down nice and easily. So this is really good for building. But I still don't use scaffolding for a couple of reasons. So first of all, if we come up here and come onto this thing here, if I'm on top of this tower and shift, because sometimes maybe I've pillared out to here, then I'm trying to reach something just over there and I want to get right to the very edge of the scaffolding and I don't want to fall off, so I sneak, but then I fall down into the scaffolding. So if I sneak, I go down. I don't want to do that. I want to stay on top of the scaffolding. So first change, if you're sneaking and there's no other scaffolding below, then we should just stay on top. If there is scaffolding below like here, then we can go up and down. But if there's just one layer of scaffolding and you shift, you just stay on top. The other thing is, I think this should have a safety mechanism where if I try and walk off like this, if I try and walk off, I'm just walking straight on, I can't actually fall off. Scaffolding should have a safety feature where you won't fall off. And that is another benefit of using scaffolding over other blocks. Now, if you do want to come down, of course, you can walk down your tower here, or if you actually jump off, then you should be allowed to come off the scaffolding. Of course, then you've got the benefit of then knocking it down again. So I think that would make scaffolding a lot better to use. Next up, these things, not the totems, the thing around it, the item frame. There is a new feature, or relatively new at least, where you can have invisible item frames, but you can't get those in survival. You can only get those in creative using commands. Now, the thing here is, I think that's really useful, really cool. So what I'd like to propose is a way to make this work in survival. So maybe if you've got an invisibility potion, you can throw it towards the item frame, and when it hits, it turns invisible, just like that. And then if you want to turn it back again, maybe get a splash potion of water, do the same thing, throw it over to the item frame, and then when it does, it comes back on. That would be super cool. Look at these beautiful coral reefs, looking amazing and majestic under the water. The problem is that these coral blocks here are not renewable, and so when you're playing in survival, you have to come over here, you have to mine these blocks if you want to use them, and that of course destroys the coral reef. Now in real life, this happens as well. Our coral reefs are under attack, they are being destroyed, and we must preserve them. So we should be able to do the same thing in Minecraft as well. And so I'd like to propose a new crafting recipe where we can get some of the coral that is renewable, we can put it into a grid like this, and we can get the blocks themselves. We can do this with all the different types. There are of course 5 of those. And also, how about the dead ones as well? Let's allow us to craft those blocks as well and save our coral reefs. In Minecraft, we sometimes get thunderstorms, and most of the time that is unwanted because it gets dark enough for mobs to spawn, and we generally want to sleep them away to get rid of it. So you can sleep in the bed and that will clear the weather and get rid of that thunderstorm. It's now the morning, not a cloud in the sky, and everyone is happy. That is, of course, unless you do want to have a thunderstorm. Maybe you want to use your channeling trident to get a charged creeper, or maybe a brown mushroom, that kind of thing. Now, the problem here is every time that anybody on your server sleeps, it resets the weather. And that means it's very difficult to get it to rain or even thunder if you want it. So a minor change I would suggest is when we sleep in a bed, it doesn't reset the weather and it allows us to get thunderstorms when we want them. We had this problem on Legacy where we were trying to get some skeleton horses, and we had to make sure that everybody on the server didn't sleep for long periods of time so we could get that thunderstorm. So yeah, if you sleep in a bed when it's normal weather, don't let it reset the weather. Diamonds. These are the most iconic block and item in the game of Minecraft, have been around for a long time, and everyone gets really excited when they find them. But they're not very useful these days. In fact, what do you actually use diamonds for nowadays? Not a lot. If you're on a multiplayer server, maybe you'll use them as currency in your shops. But apart from that, if you're in single player, you don't really need to get them ever because First thing, you've got villagers. They will trade you all the kind of tools and also armor pieces that you need. So you can get all of those just from villagers. And in fact, if you were to use a zombie to kind of cure these over and over again, you can get their prices right down. So you can buy all this stuff for just 1 emerald. That is super easy. So that means we don't need emeralds for don't need diamonds for any of that stuff. And also with the addition of mending, our tools, once we've got them, never break. So it's very unlikely we're ever going to need very many diamonds. So what I propose is that we give diamonds a bit more value. How about we remove the diamond tools from the villagers? So diamond tools and armor, the villager I don't think should ever have those in their slots. They can have have tools like this, like the iron ones, that kind of thing. That's all fine, but I don't think diamond tools or armor should be in any of the slots for villagers to trade with. Maybe some other things we can think about. Maybe when you're powering a beacon, maybe instead of all of these things, maybe the only thing that powers a beacon now is a diamond. That would be super cool as well, to kind of give diamonds some more use back in the game. And maybe there's some other things as well. And as a follow-up suggestion, let's talk about this guy, the Wandering Trader. This guy is also pretty useless, let's face it. When we see him around our base, do you get excited? I know I don't. I see him and normally I just kill him. I don't even check his trades because normally his trades are pretty rubbish. But if we remove those other trades we spoke about from the villagers, how about if we add them into the Wandering Trader instead? They can still be relatively expensive, so quite a few emeralds are needed. Obviously, a Wandering Trader you can't cure and bring the prices down. It's just going to be this, and also they only trade once. So we get our chest plate, and then that is then locked. That would be pretty cool and a nice way to get those extra items, and also a little bit of interest and a bit of excitement if you do see this Wandering Trader walking around your base. And last but by no means least, you can see it in my hotbar, you know what's coming. How about some concrete stairs and also some slabs? You know, this stuff would be amazing. Just imagine if we could do this. Just imagine all the kind of cool and colourful builds we could do. Our modern builds would also be great. Just imagine this. It would be awesome. And while you're at it, Dinnerbone, while you've added these ones, once they're in, then also if we can do the same thing with terracotta and wool, so we get some slight different colours and also some textures, that would be amazing. So there we are, 20 tiny annoying changes for Minecraft. Well, some of them are not annoying and some of them are not tiny, but there you go. I thought I'd put them all together in one video, so hopefully that's useful. Hopefully Dinnerbone sees it and maybe considers adding 1 or 2. That would be great. But yeah, in your comment section below, put down your comments. What do you reckon? Do you think any of these changes are good, bad? What do you think? Do you have any suggestions for yourself? Get them in the comments below. Hopefully we can get this passed on and hopefully we'll get some interest. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then please hit the like button, and if you're new, then feel free to subscribe, and if you've got any comments or suggestions, then get in that comment section. Alright my geeks, till next time, I will see you later.